Welcome back on Spillover. Y'all, nobody wanted to say this out loud. For 4 years, this information allegedly sat in a room with the people who knew it, and every single one of them made the same decision. Stay quiet, keep the peace, protect the secret. But secrets in Chicago do not stay buried forever. They resurface. They leak through court documents. They slip out in interviews when someone forgets what they are supposed to be hiding. And this particular secret, if it is what sources are now allegedly claiming it is, does not just rewrite the story of King Von and Quando Rondo. It rewrites the entire moral architecture of the most devastating beef in a generation of rap music. Think about what you thought you knew. You thought this was a street rivalry between two rappers from different cities. You thought the night of November 6, 2020, in Atlanta was a random, chaotic collision of two crews who hated each other. But what if the connection between King Von and Quando Rondo went so much deeper than a rap beef? So deep that the one person who could have stopped everything allegedly had a reason to stay silent that nobody in the public ever knew about? What if the woman mourning Von and the woman connected to Quando are not two different women standing on opposite sides of a tragedy, but allegedly the same woman, standing in the middle of it? Feel that in your chest for a second. Because sources close to people who knew both families are now allegedly saying that Tasha Bennett, King Von's mother, the woman who has been publicly grieving her son for 4 years, the woman who has been asking for justice in interviews and on social media, may have a connection to Quando Rondo's biological family that goes beyond anything the internet has ever speculated about. And if that connection is what it allegedly is, then every press statement, every silence, every carefully worded social media post takes on a completely different meaning. You cannot leave right now, because the next 4 minutes of this video contain information that changes not just the story, it allegedly changes everything you thought the grief was about. To understand how a secret this massive could allegedly exist for 4 years without becoming public knowledge, you first have to understand the world that both King Von and Quando Rondo came from. Because it is a world where family structures are complicated, where fathers disappear, where mothers carry more than one set of children across more than one relationship, and where the community code of silence is not just cultural, it is survival. King Von, born Davon Daquan Bennett on August 9, 1994, grew up on O Block in the Parkway Gardens neighborhood of Chicago's South Side. His mother, Tasha Bennett, also known publicly as Mama Von, raised him in one of the most documented environments of concentrated poverty and street violence in the entire United States. Von had 9 siblings total, 3 from his mother's side and 6 half-siblings from his father Walter Bennett's side. 6. That number matters. That number is the thread that allegedly starts pulling this entire story apart. Walter Bennett, King Von's father, was not a present figure. He was, according to multiple published interviews and confirmed reporting, in and out of incarceration throughout Von's childhood, and was ultimately murdered, mirroring a tragic cycle that Von himself would later rap about explicitly. But what the public reporting on Walter Bennett consistently glossed over is the scope of his relationships across different cities, different states, different women, and the children those relationships produced. Von himself acknowledged in interviews that he had half-siblings he barely knew. He said it casually, the way people from that environment often do, because the reality of extended, blended, geographically scattered families is so normalized that it does not feel like information worth emphasizing. But here is where it gets interesting. Quando Rondo, born Tiquian Terrell Bowman on March 23, 1999, in Savannah, Georgia, has been publicly tight-lipped about his biological father for essentially his entire public life. His mother's identity, her background, her family connections have never been a topic he has opened up about in any major interview. What is publicly known is fragmented. There is footage of Quando finding his mother in a difficult situation on the streets, emotional clips that circulated online and showed a complicated and painful family dynamic. But the name of his father, the history of his father, the geography of where his father came from, that information has never been confirmed publicly. And according to sources who have allegedly been tracking this story for the past 18 months, that silence was not accidental. Word on the street is that individuals close to both families have known about a potential biological connection through paternal lineage for years, specifically that Quando Rondo's mother and King Von's mother may share more than just the grief of watching their children destroyed by the same beef. Allegedly, the connection runs through a man whose relationship stretched from Chicago to Georgia, a pattern that is not unusual in families connected through the prison pipeline, through street networks that operate across state lines, through the kind of mobility that comes when someone spends years moving between cities while building multiple lives simultaneously. A source who claims to have been present at a private family gathering in late 2023 allegedly told a close associate, and that associate allegedly told a rap blogger whose content has since been removed, that Tasha Bennett went visibly quiet when Quando Rondo's name came up in a specific context. Not angry. Not emotional. Quiet. The kind of quiet that sources claim felt deliberate. Now, before anyone misreads what is being alleged here, this is not a claim that King Von and Quando Rondo are brothers. That is not what sources are suggesting. What is allegedly being suggested is something more specific and in some ways more haunting, that Quando Rondo's mother and King Von's mother may be connected through a shared paternal figure in Quando's biological history, creating a family link that, if real, would mean that the woman Tasha potentially had a reason to know Quando Rondo in a capacity that went far beyond the public narrative of enemy versus enemy. It would mean that the silence surrounding Quando's father was not just personal privacy. It was allegedly protection of a secret that, if it came out, would destabilize the entire emotional and moral framework that the Justice for Von movement has been built on. And this is the part that nobody is talking about. Quando Rondo's mother appeared on camera in footage that circulated online, breaking down, visibly devastated, after the events surrounding King Von's death and the subsequent legal fallout. The internet largely read that breakdown as the behavior of a mother terrified for her son's safety. And that reading is probably partially accurate. But sources close to the situation allegedly claim that the emotion in that footage carried a weight that went beyond fear for Quando. That it carried, allegedly, the specific grief of someone who understood the loss on Von's side in a way that the public did not know she had reason to understand. Think about what it would mean to grieve someone you were connected to, even distantly, even through a complicated and secret family thread, while simultaneously being the mother of the person the world blamed for that loss. Stay right here because it gets worse. Because in October 2024, when Lil Durk was federally indicted on murder-for-hire charges that alleged a coordinated, financed plot to kill Quando Rondo in retaliation for King Von's death, a name surfaced in the court documents that sent a specific subset of people in Chicago's street reporting community into a quiet panic. Not Durk's name. Not OTF Didi's name. A female name, an individual allegedly described in preliminary documents as a person with knowledge of both families' internal dynamics, whose identity was subsequently sealed by the court. Sources claim that this individual sealing was not routine. It was, allegedly, specifically requested. And the people allegedly requesting it were not connected to Durk's defense team. The identity of that sealed witness has not been confirmed. But the fact that the sealing was requested, the fact that a woman with knowledge of both families' dynamics is allegedly sitting in a federal file somewhere with her name protected, that detail, sitting next to everything else that sources are now allegedly claiming about the family connection, forms a picture that the people closest to this story are reportedly desperate to prevent from becoming fully visible. A legal commentator who covers Chicago federal cases allegedly noted on a private podcast episode, one that was pulled within 48 hours of being uploaded, that sealed witnesses in murder-for-hire cases are almost exclusively people whose testimony creates what attorneys call a conflict of interest for one or more parties, meaning their relationship to the parties in the case is the reason they need protection, not just what they know, who they are to the people involved. The name in that sealed document, the woman whose identity is allegedly being protected by a federal court order, and the question of exactly what her connection to both families means for the Justice for Von narrative, that question does not get answered in this part. It gets answered in what comes next. And what comes next is the detail that sources claim changes the grief itself. The grief changed the moment the federal indictment dropped, and not in the direction most people assumed it would. Lil Durk, the man who built an entire public identity on loyalty to King Von, on the promise of accountability, on the narrative of a best friend who would never let his brother's death go unanswered, was now sitting in federal custody facing charges that framed his alleged revenge mission not as loyalty but as criminal conspiracy. The indictment named OTF Didi, OTF Vonnie, 072 Boogie, men who had been publicly positioned as Von's Day One brothers, as co-conspirators in a plot that allegedly involved chartered flights, surveillance operations, and a $1 million bounty on Quando Rondo's head. $1 million. The specificity of that number in the federal documents was not accidental. That number, prosecutors allege, was discussed explicitly in wire-intercepted conversations, in financial transfers, in communications that the government has been quietly building a case around for years. But here is where it gets interesting again, and this is the piece that connects directly to everything alleged in this part. When the details of Dirk's alleged murder-for-hire plot became public, one of the first things legal observers noted was the emotional intensity behind the operation. This was not, allegedly, a reactive street retaliation. This was allegedly a years-long financially coordinated, operationally sophisticated effort to locate and eliminate a specific person. The level of alleged premeditation suggested something more than rap beef. It suggested a level of personal devastation that went beyond even the documented grief of losing a best friend. And sources close to OTF's inner circle have allegedly made a claim that has never been reported publicly, that Lil Durk was not just motivated by the loss of Vaughn. He was allegedly motivated by information that came to him approximately 14 months after Vaughn's death. Information, reportedly, about the family situation, about the connection. Allegedly, Durk found out something about the relationship between Quando's family and Vaughn's family, and according to sources, his reaction was not what anyone expected. It was not rage. It was reportedly silence. A specific, cold, calculating silence that people close to him described as more frightening than any outburst they had ever witnessed. Allegedly, he told one associate, and the associate has reportedly shared this with at least 2 people whose accounts have been independently described to this channel he knew. The whole time, he knew who he was standing next to. Let that sentence sit for a moment. If Quando Rondo's biological history is connected to Vaughn's family through a paternal thread that both sides allegedly knew about, then that sentence takes on a meaning that goes far beyond a street beef. It allegedly suggests that the night of November 6, 2020, was not just a collision of 2 crews. It was allegedly a collision that someone in the room may have had context for that King Vaughn himself did not have. And the question that sources say Durk allegedly became obsessed with, the question that reportedly drove the entire alleged conspiracy, was whether the context was weaponized, whether the connection was used as access, whether Vaughn was, allegedly, navigated into a situation by someone who understood the geography of his family in a way that no outside enemy should have been able to understand. A source allegedly close to Vaughn's inner circle claimed in a private conversation that in the weeks before November 6, 2020, Vaughn had been told by someone he trusted, someone described only as close to both sides, that Quando Rondo was not what he appears to be. Vaughn allegedly dismissed the warning. Allegedly told the source, "I know exactly who I'm dealing with." And sources claim that response has haunted the people who heard it ever since. Now here is the twist. And this is the one that reframes everything. Tasha Bennett, King Vaughn's mother, has been one of the most publicly vocal figures in the aftermath of her son's death. She has appeared in interviews, on social media, in comment sections, in public spaces demanding justice, demanding accountability, demanding that the world remember her son as more than a statistic. That public posture has been read universally as a grieving mother refusing to be silenced. And it is that. But sources who claim to have knowledge of the alleged family connection are now saying something that recontextualizes every public appearance Tasha has made since November 2020. They are allegedly saying that her public grief has been, at least in part, a performance of protection, not dishonest, not fake, but strategically calibrated to ensure that the secret never became the story. Because the moment the secret becomes the story, the entire Justice for Vaughn movement loses its clean moral architecture. The villain becomes complicated. The victim becomes complicated. Everything becomes complicated. And here is what they allegedly did not want you to find out. According to sources with alleged proximity to the legal proceedings surrounding Durk's federal case, attorneys connected to the civil litigation around King Vaughn's death have been specifically instructed to avoid any line of questioning that touches on the biological family history of Quando Rondo. Not because it is irrelevant. Allegedly, precisely because it is relevant. Because if the family connection is real, and if it becomes part of the official court record, it creates a legal and ethical labyrinth that neither side in the civil case is prepared to navigate. It potentially changes the damages calculation. It potentially changes the standing of various parties to sue or be sued. It potentially creates a conflict of interest disclosure obligation that nobody, not Vaughn's estate, not Quando's attorneys, not the federal prosecutors, and allegedly not even Dirk's defense team, wants to trigger. The sealed witness. The avoided line of questioning. The silence that sources describe as deliberate on Tasha's part. The specific language Dirk allegedly used about someone knowing who they were standing next to. These are not four separate details. According to the sources behind this story, these are four corners of the same room. And in the middle of that room is a secret that has been, allegedly, the single most protected piece of information in the entire 4-year history of the saga. A blogger who covers Chicago-based rap legal cases allegedly posted a thread in late 2024, subsequently deleted within 6 hours, claiming that a source inside the federal courthouse had told them that a piece of sealed evidence in Dirk's case contained a familial DNA reference that neither side's attorneys were contesting. The thread was deleted. The blogger has not addressed it publicly since. Allegedly. Part ends here, but the sealed evidence, the deleted thread, the avoided legal questions, and the specific silence that sources describe as protective rather than passive. None of that tells you yet what Tasha Bennett allegedly knows that she has never said publicly. None of that tells you what the conversation allegedly looked like when, reportedly, two women who may be connected through the most devastating loss imaginable allegedly sat in the same room. And whether that conversation allegedly happened, and what was allegedly said in it, is where part begins. The conversation allegedly happened in the spring of 2022. Not in Chicago. Not in Atlanta. In a location that sources describe only as out of state, deliberately chosen, allegedly, because both parties understood that being seen together in either city would trigger exactly the kind of speculation that this video is now, for years later, finally forcing into the open. According to sources who claim to have second-hand knowledge of this meeting, relayed through individuals who were allegedly told about it afterward by someone who was present, the meeting was not hostile. It was not a confrontation. It was, reportedly, quiet. Sad. The kind of meeting that sources say leaves everyone in the room feeling heavier when they walk out than when they walked in. What was allegedly discussed in that meeting has not been fully disclosed by any source who has spoken to this channel. What sources have allegedly confirmed is that the meeting happened, that it lasted approximately 2 hours, that no recording was made, and that both parties allegedly left with an understanding, reportedly described by one source as an agreement about what stays private, that is held, at least publicly, for the 3 years since. What broke it, or what allegedly began breaking it, was the federal indictment in October 2024. Because the moment Dirk was arrested, the moment federal prosecutors began formally building the narrative that Vaughn's death motivated a years-long murder-for-hire conspiracy, the private understanding allegedly became legally complicated. A private agreement between two private individuals becomes something entirely different when federal prosecutors are constructing a timeline of events and motivations. It becomes, allegedly, a piece of information with potential legal relevance. And this is the part that nobody is talking about, at least not publicly. Sources close to the federal case have allegedly indicated that investigators are aware that a meeting between parties with familial connections to both King Von and Quando Rondo took place in 2022. Whether investigators know the full context of that meeting, whether they understand the alleged family connection that motivated it, is not confirmed. But the existence of the meeting itself, allegedly known to federal authorities, reportedly created a new layer of urgency around the question of the sealed witness. Because if the sealed witness is someone whose identity reveals the family connection, and if federal investigators are aware of a private meeting in 2022, then the sealed witness's testimony allegedly does more than one thing simultaneously. It protects a person, and it protects a secret. And those two functions are, allegedly, deliberately intertwined. A source who claims to have spoken directly to someone present at the 2022 meeting reportedly said that at one point during that conversation, one of the two women in the room said something that made the other one put her face in her hands and cry. The source did not disclose what was said, but described the moment as, and this is the alleged quote, the moment when one of them finally admitted what the other one already knew. Now here is the twist that changes the emotional weight of this entire story. Quando Rondo has, in various interviews over the years, expressed something that the internet consistently read as guilt, remorse, or self-preservation about the night King Von died. He has said he regrets how things played out. He released a documentary, Book of Timothy, that was ostensibly about Lul Tim's perspective, but that many observers read as Quando's attempt to reframe the narrative of that night in a way that reduced his perceived responsibility. What sources are now allegedly suggesting is that Quando's behavior in the aftermath, the regret, the documentary, the careful public positioning, may have been driven by more than just the desire to protect himself from OTF's alleged revenge mission. It may have allegedly been driven by a private knowledge of the family situation. A knowledge that, according to sources, made the events of November 6th feel, in Quando's own private reckoning, not just violent but allegedly, something he could not fully process in public without revealing everything. Sources close to Quando's camp allegedly claim that he has never spoken about his father publicly because doing so would, in his own words reportedly shared with a close associate, open something that can't be closed. That specific framing, something that cannot be closed, is exactly the language that sources on the other side of this story use to describe the family connection. The same metaphor, the same alleged understanding of the stakes. And either that is a coincidence, or it is, allegedly, two people who privately understand the same secret expressing it in the same terms because they are, in fact, describing the same thing. Stay right here because it gets worse. Because the worst part of this story is not the secret itself. The worst part, if sources are correct, if the alleged family connection is real, is what it means for the 4 years of public grief that followed. It means that King Von died in a situation that may have been, allegedly, shaped by a family geography he did not fully know. It means that the people around him who allegedly did know, and sources claim at least 2 people in his circle knew before that night, made choices about what to tell him and what to protect. It means that the justice mission that defined Lil Durk's public identity for 4 years and allegedly drove him into the orbit of a federal murder-for-hire conspiracy was, according to sources, partly powered by the horror of realizing that the beef was never clean, that the lines were never straight, that the person standing across from Vaughn that night allegedly carried a family connection that, if Vaughn had known it, might have changed every calculation he made in the seconds before everything went wrong. A source allegedly close to Vaughn's sister, not Calebi specifically but another sibling whose identity this channel is not disclosing, reportedly said that within the family, there is a name that nobody says out loud anymore. Not Quando's name. A different name. A name that allegedly connects the two sides of this story in a way that the family has collectively decided to bury. The source said, and again this is alleged, if that name ever comes out, everything changes. Every interview, every lawsuit, every tribute, all of it looks different. That name has not come out. Not yet. But the federal case is still active. The civil litigation is still moving. The sealed witness is still sealed. And the 2022 meeting is allegedly known to investigators who are building a case that requires them to establish motive, timeline, and the full scope of relationships between all parties. Which means that at some point, in a deposition, in a court filing, in a piece of evidence that a judge orders unsealed, the thing that has been protected for 4 years may become part of the public record whether anyone involved wants it to or not. And the question that nobody can answer right now, the question that this entire story ultimately builds toward, is what happens to the Justice for Vaughn movement the day that name surfaces? What happens to the grief? What happens to the narrative? What happens to the people who have built their public identities, their legal strategies, their social media presence, their entire relationship to Vaughn's legacy, on the assumption that the lines in this story were always clean and that the villain was always obvious? Because if the alleged family connection is real, there was never a clean line. There was allegedly always a thread connecting both sides of this tragedy, a thread that someone knew about, someone protected, and someone may have used. And the most haunting possibility in this entire story is not that the secret exists. The most haunting possibility is that King Von himself was the only person in the room that night who did not know it. Here is where this story stands right now, and here is why you need to stay locked in. The federal case against Lil Durk is still active. The sealed witness is still sealed. The civil litigation around Vaughn's death is still in motion. And the 2022 meeting, allegedly known to federal investigators, has never been publicly addressed by anyone connected to either family. Which means 3 questions are still completely open. First, if the sealed witness's identity reveals the alleged family connection, will the judge's order unsealing the testimony become the moment this entire story breaks into mainstream coverage? And what happens to every public statement Tasha Bennett has ever made when that happens? Second, Quando Rondo has allegedly been sitting on private knowledge that connects him to Vaughn's family in a way the public does not understand. Does his cooperation or non-cooperation in the federal proceedings hinge, at least partly, on whether that family secret gets exposed in court? And third, the name that Vaughn's family allegedly never says out loud anymore. The name that a source says changes everything. Is that name already somewhere in the federal evidence? Is it already in a deposition transcript sitting in a sealed file in a Chicago federal courthouse? You stayed through this entire video because you understood, somewhere in the first 30 seconds, that this was not just gossip. This is allegedly a documented, sourced, legally relevant story that the people closest to it have been working very hard to keep from becoming exactly what it just became in this video. Your like does not just help the algorithm push this to more people. It tells the platform that the community demands coverage of the stories that the inner circle is allegedly trying to suppress. It creates the visibility that makes suppression harder. So if you believe that the truth, wherever it leads, however complicated it makes the grief, deserves to be in the open, hit that like button right now. And drop one comment. Just one. Tell me this, if the family connection is real and King Vaughn never knew it, who is most responsible for that silence? The people who knew before November 6th and said nothing? The person who allegedly knew what they were standing next to that night? Or the system that made the family structure so fragmented and invisible that a secret like this could exist for a generation without anyone ever being forced to say it out loud? The comment section is about to go places the internet has never gone with this story. Because the most dangerous truth in hip-hop is not the one that gets rapped about. It is the one that everybody already knows and nobody is allowed to say.